departments also get funding for maintenance of properties, and it's important that that money goes on the maintenance of properties and not on other things that department need.
Can I just clarify one thing? You've talked about that 500,000 or £500,000. You're talking about the whole of Half Depart. You're not talking particularly of one area. Yeah. You're talking about the Half Depart area.
Half Depart, yeah.
Area. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, so next question. So similarly, thank you. So similarly, can you detail what is covered by other I&E estate projects and the increase that budget sees in 2028 in comparison to the preceding years?
I'm going to hand over to Tim for that question. So.
The increase in funding is partly because we're looking at a review of our preventative maintenance packages, the PPMs. We've had the same contract in place for I don't know, maybe 10 years or so, and we have just re-tendered and are going through the contracts for a review of how we approach PPMs. PPMs cover the statutory and regulatory maintenance of our estate, so effectively keeping the buildings safe. Clearly we're living in a sort of a finite world, so what we're having to do is to put a little bit more money, we think, into the PPMs in order to make sure that we prepare the buildings for the future. The expectation is that that will then reduce the reactive maintenance costs, and that the buildings will be more regularly maintained, will be in an ongoing better condition, and that, as I say, hopefully that'll reduce the reactive, but we've yet to see clearly if that's the case.
Okay.
If I can, Deputy, are you asking a specific question on the line in the capital programme on other estate projects?
Yes.
Which totals 1.58 in. So that effectively includes a skate park investment, as well as DVA improvements to our estate. So just access improvements, those sort of things that we have to spend on the estate to keep them up to standard in terms of those other discrimination laws, safeguarding laws, those sort of things.
Sure. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, the panel has noted that a recent public hearing with the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning that relatively urgent structural repairs are required at Highlands College. Are you satisfied that the budget allocated to Jersey Property Holdings for the purpose of Highlands repairs is sufficient to carry out the work which is needed to ensure safety and continuation of provision?
Well, I think that's the same point as the liquid waste. If there's an issue with safety, we have to find the money. Mm-hmm. And if that means that it delays us doing something else and we've got to make a decision to do that, then we've got to be dynamic and do those kind of things. So our first priority with any investment that we receive for our properties is to make sure that we meet the statutory safety requirements. That could be electrical testing, that could be water safety, fire safety. So those all become our priorities. So if we need to spend more than we've been allocated, then we have to find ways of finding that money. But our priority's got to be for the safety of the people that use the building, the people that work in the building, and the people that visit the building. Mm-hmm. So that's always our priority.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Looking around panel members, no other further questions on that one. Okay, so can you explain, so the next question is, can you explain for the panel why the new school and educational development is listed under the estates programme rather than the capital programme?
Well, that'll be an accounting thing, which I have to look to my colleague.
Yeah, so the capital programme is broken down into various chunks. I think in general terms, it's estates, which means property. We've got infrastructure, which is generally our roads and in-ground infrastructure. We've also got digital investments and things like that. So the investment, if I look at the capital programme here now, the estate section of the budget includes a lot of buildings. Effectively, it includes buildings that cover our health, some of our health estates, some of our school estates, some of our, for instance, crematoriums in there and things like that. So estates is used as a wider term just for the buildings expenditure.
But it doesn't cover all of them.
No, so
it's
specific estates projects in this term of the budget. obviously there's a lot of other ongoing spend on buildings which occur generally in our property revenue in our revenue budgets.
So it goes to the point I mentioned earlier about us looking at what we do and how we do things, because we've got.
This is more about the split. That's all we're talking about
So
here.
it's
Is how,
about how we present things, David, going forward. So for me, I'll give you an example. Probably Holdens are responsible for some grass verges, infrastructure are responsible for some grass verges. Why on earth? And in some cases, why on earth do we continue to own those grass verges?
Sure.
Why don't we offer those to the local community, i.e. the parish? So we're looking at how can we clean up what we do and how we present things to make it simple. But we're just a few months in really, and so we won't be. It's not being able to do it for this budget, but hopefully for the next budget, it'll be clearer to everybody, not just politicians, but the public as well.
okay.
Yeah.
And if I may, just a couple of additions. At the moment, the property team, infrastructure, environment look after effectively non-technical. So bits of the hospital, the prison, specific areas of the police station that has technical requirements that are effectively beyond our sort of knowledge and capability. But there are also elsewhere in the estate bits and pieces of property or premises that are held by other departments, but actually should come back to property holdings. And we've recently taken over the running of the residential area by the prison, and we've also been supporting Home Affairs in terms of the ambulance station and bits and pieces of that. Which has actually been very effective in terms of giving us an overall view of the estate and allowing us a much more corporate picture of what we can do and where we can do it. So one of the challenges that we face in our review of how we deliver the service is do we continue to bring stuff back into property holdings where we can have that corporate view, or is there another view of perhaps how the system can be operated, again, that will deliver safe and cost-effective estate?
And can I ask on this, does that mean why, and it comes back, I guess, to the question Deputy Ward asked earlier about the drop-off of funds in 2028, there is no funding put for major refurbishments or fire safety in the Cyprus estates? Is that then why there is nothing put in 2028 because of this review about who actually, which budget, where would that sit for those two specific things? I'm just trying to work.
We'd like to think that the fire safety work will be completed.
Yes.
So that's the aim.
Okay.
So
And the major refurbishment and upgrades, because there's nothing put for 2028, so just wondering how that works.
So, excuse me if I may, we're working with the Treasury team at the moment. The programme that you see in front of you is sort of it's a snapshot, it's a 4-year view, which doesn't really aid management of an estate where buildings' lives are in maybe 40 or 50 years. And so what we're trying to do with Treasury is to get a much longer view of where issues might lie. We just had a condition survey completed, which will give us a sort of a sliding scale of a view of priorities and challenges that we face. And we'll start to slot those sort of premises and issues in the years beyond the capital programme, so that we've got something more constructive when we come to discussions around or the Council of Ministers are discussing what the priority should be. We've got more empirical evidence or more detailed evidence of, well, actually, do we know that the roof here is out of date, the mechanical electrical engineering dies here, and so from our view, this is something that we should be bringing forward. So as I say, we although you get a 4-year view here, that's not the way that we're thinking, and we're trying desperately to push to give us a much longer horizon, which will smooth the expenditure, because at the moment everything gets sort of front-loaded because people don't really understand that there is sort of life after the existing government plan.
So just to confirm, understand what you were saying, but in this budget, it looks like it just drops off to nothing. Are you saying that in the budget 2026, you will then add back into that in this new framework that you're talking about?
We may or we may not. As I said, I think we there's no certainty at the moment, but what we are aware of is that we don't have a comprehensive view of those future years. So we're still being reactive when we're painfully aware that we actually need to be proactive.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think as the Minister said, it is the published capital plan, the programme in the government plan is as we know now. What we can absolutely guarantee is that things will change. So if we look 12, 24 months ahead, other things will occur that will need to be reflected in the capital programme at some point, and these numbers will undoubtedly change. Certainly the further out we get, we've got good certainty, I think, 24, 25, 26. But as we get into 27, 28, we're looking further out. Undoubtedly those numbers will change again, and maybe new lines will be added depending on what issues have appeared.
Thank you, Deputy.
Okay, thank you. So next question is there any concern about the impact of the service level agreements that you are developing with SIPES for the school estates? Sorry, you did mention this, on the level of funding allocated to Jersey Property Holdings. Presumably you were talking about these ongoing discussions, so I don't know when to develop on that already, if you feel like you've already answered that to a degree.
No, happy to continue.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated we haven't done it already. I want to get things done. We were hampered by the summer holidays, and we're now coming fast approaching half term, but I'm assured that discussions are taking place during the half term. What that delay has allowed us is to refine some of that work. So I think we'll end up with a better product by waiting. So I'll hold my hand up to that to say we're better to have a bit of patience at times. But we will, when we've got those service level agreements, we will then ensure that the funds are allocated appropriately. So if funds are currently allocated to a school to do, I'll just say, this is hypothetical, gutter cleaning, and the SLA says that probably Holden's going to look after all the gutter cleaning, then the money will need to follow the service.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's fine. I think we've done enough on that one. Yeah. So my final question in this section, the panel understands that it's still your intention to deliver a town skate park by the end of this term of office. However, the funding is not in the budget until 2028. Can you explain this?
Yeah, so I've met with Deputy Stevens, who's showing very keen interest. We've been through the presentation, we've identified a site. I'm hoping that, I think we're in pre-planning. We are planning at the moment, and we're assured that the monies are available to do it as soon as we get planning permission. Right. And we're working with the skate community on that. Yeah.
And is this budget for 2024 for this, or where does that sit within the budget?
I'm assured by Treasury that the funding will be brought forward for the skate park.
I think that's another example of the capital programme movement that we're talking about. Depending on issues, we have an ongoing dialogue with Treasury around what the profile of the capital programme looks like, depending on what issues we're seeing. So, skate park is one of those conversations we want to see earlier in the programme. It will undoubtedly mean another couple of things maybe slipping back. Some of that is reality, because sometimes things just don't appear as they. This is a day one, we publish the capital plan, that's what we expected on that day, and then other things occur, and we either get time delay or we get things that are pressured that come forward. However, the skate park certainly is something we want to get on with next year.
This message about reality and the capital programme being out of date the moment it's published is, we hear it quite a lot. Is there merit, or do you think that the budget goes far enough in explaining how movement for projects can occur? So it sounds like it's well aware that the skate park could be funded outside of 2028, but the narrative isn't there to enable states members or the public to understand, I think, as you say, the reality of capital programming.
So I've met with Deputy Stevenson and written to her to give her that assurance, because it's my intention to get it done. In a previous life, I was dealing with similar budgets to the one that infrastructure has, and in my experience, if you're purchasing something, it may not be manufactured. You may have an opportunity earlier to buy something, and you've just got to be a little bit dynamic. And I think when you see the document, the size that it is, the government plan, the budget, you could have something 5 times as large, and it still would move. So I think you've just got to make decisions based on the information you've got on the day. And then you have to respond to events, opportunities, risk, threats, So you have to, as in any other organisation, respond to those things.
But do you think there should be some, at least even short narrative that clarifies that that is potentially a legitimate approach to take, so that those who see these movements know it's planned and understood within how, yeah.
I think that's probably a question for the Treasury Minister rather than the Infrastructure Minister, because it would be the same for all of the departments. Yeah, so we're given an envelope, we work within the envelope. So I think that's it.
Yeah.
So you can't spend money unless you've got the business plan in place. So there are lots of checks and balances within the finance manual. So I do think it's a weighty document already. So
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a fair question because we do publish a moment in time here. That's our best assessment of what we think is going to be coming on when, and then obviously reality occurs and things have to be dynamic. We do have a regular dialogue with our Treasury colleagues, especially certainly around capital spend, and I think it's incumbent on us to explain if anything is moving here, why it's moving, and what's the implications of that move. For instance, we spoke about some of the rising mains earlier. We've had to spend money on those. We have no option but to do that. As a result, we've had to make some other decisions to push funding in different directions. So I think as long as we're open about what we're doing, it just shows the reality of life.
Okay.
Thank you. Deputy Coles.
Yeah, I think it actually moves onto the section of the capital programme, and also building on what we've just been saying. So what sort of assessment is done around the long-term increase in costs that may come from delays or inaction?
Well, I think that's a really valid question. I think I told you in September that 58% of our expenditure is on non-staff. And we see as a department significant increases in costs, way above, in some cases, the increase in our budget. And again, we've got to respond in that way. We're seeing, we've got the ICE program, which is designed to maximise efficiencies, to make sure that we've got the money available, make sure the resource is available, so the human resource, to deliver things. And the ICE project, I think, program is a really good step forward, and pay tribute to the officers who've put that together, as well as the ALOs who have worked with us to actually get that there. And I think it will help all of us, help the island, by having a longer plan in terms of what we're going to do to try and stop peaks and troughs. And we're seeing in the construction industry at the moment, I was talking to a large contractor in the street yesterday morning. He was telling me that things weren't as buoyant as they were because of the interest rate predominantly. And so if we're able to help in any way, then that's a good opportunity by looking at that ICE programme. Yeah.
Is there any sort of criteria that's used, though, to, like I say, with delaying projects and continuation of others? You know, what methodology do you use to weigh up?
Well, I don't know the science, but there are a number of things that will come into the decision. So often it'll be planning, and if planning hasn't been granted in the time that we expected it to be granted, that's going to delay a programme. And I think there's been some good progress made in the planning, the speed of planning decisions. So hopefully that won't be there. It could be availability of resource. It could be, as we've discussed, that we've had to divert financial resource to do something that's urgent. So there's a whole range of things. But in terms of a science, I don't think we have a...
No, I think it's a blend of all those. That sometimes it's just a risk base. Things just have to be fixed and repaired or replaced. Some of it is that we know there's a community need for new facilities, so we'll be looking at that. It's a complete balancing that, which I guess that typifies how the government plan's put together. Really, is a balancing act of all of those things.
I mean, you said earlier, sort of, if you have again, we'll just stick with the sewage treatment work. So the rising main at First Tower required extra funding. So that meant you'd have to do a risk assessment of your other projects to consider which one you're able to delay. Are you able to share any of those kind of risk assessments with us?
Yeah, we certainly do asset management on all of our infrastructure assets. So we know what the condition is, and we look at trying to plan out the replacement of those assets every 25 years. The drainage work, we do lots of modelling. So we get cameras of all the network, to assess the condition, then that condition's rated between a 1 to 5, and then that's how we go through and look at our prioritisation and programme. There's also things that happen during the course of the year. So if we know that we've got certain areas where there's a lot of surface water flooding or areas like that, again, we're monitoring that and looking at how we prioritise that programme during the year. Rising main replacement for first tower was on our list. It just been pushed out as we were focusing on other projects. So again, we've got to be dynamic. We've got to carry on doing the condition surveys and be reactive. Sometimes we're able to patch work. In the case with first tower at the moment, we're doing relining, so we're not replacing all the pipes, but we've got a short-term measure for the next 10 years, hopefully, that will see us through in that space.
I think another thing that's worth mentioning is once a month, when we have a ministerial meeting, we're brought up to date with each of the capital projects. We've got a RAG status, so we know if something's behind on schedule or if it's just about okay. And that's part of that decision-making process, because we don't want to get to November and find out that we haven't got enough money to do everything we want to do, or we're going to have money left. So that's something that is done with the ministerial team, but the department, the officers do that in more detail. And the chap we've got doing that is a very good officer.
Yeah, so this is getting a little bit off piste. I'm trying to stay with the subject matter. I appreciate is the budget, but this issue you talked about bumping into somebody in the construction industry who's saying things are tough. Obviously, we've recently seen another business fail. How much interaction is there between the government and the private sector in terms of, because obviously these prioritisations, if you know there's capacity in the private sector to do some of this stuff, I mean, how aware are they of that?
Well, I think
are you able to make them very aware of it?
I think we presented the ICE programme to the construction council and their members as a way of starting that dialogue. And we want people to invest in training for young people, for example. And if they can see there's a future, then hopefully they will do that. It was just a chance meeting of someone I played football with, so
no, it's fine. No, obviously there's been a reality though, a business failing, and very recently, high publicity, and we're thinking, well, if you've got lots of projects that you need to get done,
again,
how come I think one of the criticisms he made was around planning. I think was one of the reasons he felt there's delays.
It's an observation rather than criticism.
Yeah.
And I think progress has been made, and we should recognise that progress has been made.
Sure.
But you've got to have the funds available, and so. I think one thing that the infrastructure team should take a lot of credit for is their ability to deliver projects on budget and on time. And I think they've got a very good track record when it comes to that. They can't control things that are out of their control, clearly, but I do think in general they've got a very good track record, and one they should be proud of, or we should be proud of.
Just in terms of liaison with the industry, the quick answer is yes, we do liaise with the industry, both from an infrastructure perspective, but also a construction perspective. I think it's also fair to say we spend a lot of money already with the construction industry locally, both infrastructure spend and construction spend. So we have framework agreements with a lot of suppliers. A lot of day-to-day spend goes out through the construction industry. I think it's also not all constructors out there work for government. So some recent examples, for instance, we hadn't got any work placed with that individual constructor. Some of those constructors focus more on the private residential market rather than sort of government in construction market. So it does vary, but we do have a dialogue. I've got a meeting, for instance, this Friday with the Construction Council as just a regular meeting. We also are looking at developing a wider sort of developer construction forum, industry forum, because the Construction Council does represent the industry, but some people aren't involved in that either. So we want to keep the dialogue going. As the Minister said, the 10-year outlook on the ICE programme is good information that people can base their decisions on. However, there's a lot of private sector spend out there as well that hopefully people will see coming back online again, with the interest rate regime changing.
Sure. Thanks.
We asked in September about your decision not to include capital project funding for the market revitalisation project over the life of this budget. Can you share with the panel any feedback you have had from traders or stall holders in relation to this decision?
We are spending a lot of money on the market, on the roof, and etc. And we've got a meeting with market traders shortly. I'm going to look behind. Is it in the next 2 weeks? Sorry. So the Constable of St Helier leads on the markets, and he sends his apologies for today, but he's just back from Germany, I think. But so the dialogue happens there. We work closely with our colleagues in economy, and there's a meeting scheduled shortly with the market traders.
Okay. And is that going to be discussing whether new leases are going to be
Absolutely, yeah. It's our intention to. We're due to write to the market traders, I think, ahead of that meeting, and then have the meeting. Yeah. We hope to get it resolved in the coming weeks. Yeah.
Excellent, good to hear. Yeah. There's a specific capital programmes line in the budget for road safety with no funding allocated to it. Can you explain why that is, and whether you believe that sufficient funding is allocated for road safety as part of the infrastructure rolling vote?
Well, we've got to be grateful to Constable Stone, who worked with my predecessor to get a percentage of the car park trading fund for road safety, and I think there's some good progress being made in that area. Only last week or the week before, we had people over from Tyre Safe, which is a UK charity. They're going to come back again. They've trained up people locally to use a very clever system which can be rolled out. DVS have got it. I believe the Honorary Police could use the system to check not only the tread of a tyre, but also the pressure on a tyre, and I went down to see how that was working. We also had colleagues went to a conference recently in Sweden, and as a result of that conference, we've got an online presentation from one of the major speakers to talk to us about what the Sweden has done around road safety. And you'll have seen on the front page of the JP recently the camera that is due to arrive on Ireland in the coming weeks. I'm not sure when. I think we're at a previous
Next
meeting.
year, I think it was.
Well, I think it'd be, probably around the Christmas, but I think at the previous meeting it was ordered that day because I remember an officer coming to whisper in my ear that it's actually been ordered. So there's significant work going on in road safety. And interestingly, talking to the chaps from the charity, they'd worked with our road safety officer for some 17 years in the UK and spoke very highly of the individual, and I would echo those words.
But there's still no funding getting to stay in the line of the budget. There's the question.
Yes, so the capital programme doesn't have anything new, but we are looking at funding it via other routes.
No.
So that would be revenue rather than capital, yeah?
Some maybe through planning obligations,
Yeah.
other areas we could be looking at to try and resolve.
So
resourcing
treatments,
schemes.
etc. Yeah.
And in that way, do you have kind of a target that you want to get to? Because we don't see it in the budget. Is there a target of the amount that you want to be collecting to help sustain road safety, but also improve related to the strategy that I believe was agreed?
I think there are some.
And can you get to that?
Yeah, so I think there are some quick wins, and only in the last 3 weeks I've visited one parish's road committee with an officer to try and persuade them to work with us to encourage cycling on a specific route. And we're meeting another parish at the start of November to do the same. And if we can connect those two parishes, we plan to spend a little amount of money, but to have a very effective corridor, basically, for cyclists, for example. So the work is ongoing. We're trying throughout the department to try and be a little bit smarter in what we do and how we do things, and we've got some creative people, so I'm quite confident we're going to deliver some stuff. Yeah.
I suppose there's also the other question, this speeding camera. I know there's an outlay of about £35,000.
Yeah.
And I assume some of the money collected from fines will be going to cover that cost, but is there a chance to take some of the money that's received from fines to allocate towards better?
Well, I think the concept of the camera is around the unsocial driving that we see around the island, predominantly at nights or early morning. And, in the last week, I've been woken up at 10 past 4 and 20 past 2 by speeding vehicles. And I'm not talking about somebody that's doing 24 miles an hour and a 20 miles an hour speed limit. I'm talking about somebody that is driving at excessive speed. And I think the idea of this camera is to try and target those people, to try and stop or reduce serious accidents. This is not a revenue generating system. I think if you put a camera like that on Victoria Avenue, then you wouldn't keep up with it probably. So the idea of this camera is around trying to encourage people to drive sensibly and not drive erratically. And we've just seen a very successful motor rally, and that's the time for people to drive at speed on closed roads in a safe, organised manner, not as happens right around the island. And we get feedback from right across the island. It's not just the north of the island, it's everywhere.
Thank you, Conatap.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And we look forward to receiving you about a cycle pathway maybe in our parish. Thank you. A few questions for May on the infrastructure rolling vote and the public realm. We note that the infrastructure rolling vote is 2.1 million less in 2025 and in subsequent years to that which was approved in 2024 when it was 18.9 million. Given the stated importance of the rolling vote, are you satisfied that the funding is sufficient for the work that you're required to cover within this?
Well, it's back to choice and it's back to priorities. So, for example, we will be investing £6.5 million in roads resurfacing in 2025. If you gave me £8.5 million, I could invest that extra £2 million in road resurfacing. So it is about prioritising, and we use, much to some people's upset, where a road doesn't need to be dug up and resurfaced at full depth. We use a coating, which I can never remember the name of.
Micro asphalt.
Micro asphalt. And what that does is it protects the structure of the road for a longer period of time, which means that we can get our money to go further. And so, we've got significant. We spoke about the capital program for liquid waste, but we do drainage surveys, water separation. That's also in the rolling vote as well. We've got work that we've got to do is keep business as usual. So yeah,
I understand that, but the concern is that if the amount is reduced, are you going to be able to continue with those services?
Well, I think I think I've mentioned a few times about efficiencies, and we're certainly using far less external consultants within the department, and I'm expecting some of those savings to be reinvested in some of this work. So it may take us slightly longer to do some things, which is frustrating, but I think we've just got to cut our cloth accordingly and do our level best, and that's what an operations team in whatever organisation would do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And are you aware of any projects which have actually been delayed or cancelled because of the reduction? Or, again, is it, as you say, a question of deferring them until you have the funds or reprioritising?
Well, certainly public realm is, some of that work has got to be deferred. So I think we've said, the Constable St Helena and I have both said before that our priority wouldn't have been Lamott Street, although Lamott Street is a fantastic job. We think the timing of Lamott Street was totally wrong with our customer service office right there. The time to do that work we felt would have been after we've moved to our new offices. So we plan to do work in new cuts, so from the jewellers towards Library Place, as opposed to starting up near the department store and the church. So we think we can prioritise and work in that manner.
I think that brings us neatly on to St Helier itself, because the Island Indicator Outcomes Dashboard, that's a mouthful, suggests that satisfaction with St Helier as an indicator is worsening. You touched on it already. Can you expand on the specific improvements in the public realm in St Helier which will be funded by this budget, other than those you've referred to?
Well, we're looking at a number of areas. There's work that goes unseen, so this week where we'll be publishing the consultation that we did with the Hopper Park residents about the sea defences. That will be a great improvement for St Helier. It's not a nice to have; it's a must have. It's how do we do that? That's what's open for discussion. We've got Western Bus Gate, which will be in St Helier, but will probably benefit islanders who live in the west of the islands because it will enable buses to leave Liberation Station and access Victoria St Albans Road quicker by going in front of Kingsgate House at the end of Gloucester Street. So that will very similar to what's happened with the east of the island with the buses going in front of the Pom Door, and that's been a great benefit. So I've mentioned Newcut and King Street, and then we'll be moving into Broad Street. That's where our focus will be. We've just opened the car park in Charles Street, which will benefit St Helier businesses, St Helier residents, but all islanders in as much as anybody can use that facility. A long-awaited opening of that facility.
And to bring those points together and having regard to the satisfaction indicator, will there be some programme available to the public to tell them what is happening in the future?
Yeah, I think what we've tried to do, and I'll use the Hopper bus as an example. We've seen, I've not seen the latest statistics. I hope they're still going in the right direction, but we've seen a 79% increase in the ridership on the Hopper bus. We've got lots of capacity to take a lot more people, so we're working with the provider to promote that service. And again, you can use the Hopper bus if you live in St Helier, but if you live elsewhere, you can get a through ticket and also use that service. But it hopefully will help other areas of St Helier.
My question really was, you've got these various targets, and are the public aware of them? It might help their satisfaction level if they were.
It's a good question and something we can consider.
Okay, thank you.
And a quick one, you mentioned the Western Bus Gateway being on stream but not started yet from a implementation. To what extent within the schemes do you see provision of greater cycling in these schemes in the budget period? So does the Western Bus Gateway provide for better access from those from the north side, obviously, through that crossing? Do you see that whilst these are individual projects, there is integration within the wider network?
Yeah, so I haven't seen the detailed drawings for the Western Bus Gateway. I understand the concept. We recently walked around St Helier and looked at identifying areas where we could increase the amount of blue badge parking. We have targeted areas that are most often used by people who don't hold a blue badge to identify them, to try and reduce the misuse of those spaces. And we believe that we've made progress. We also think we can increase that further still. And I think I've got a meeting on the 6th of November, I think it is, to discuss that. We are looking at installing a lot more cycle parking. So, for example, at Snow Hill, we intend to install some cycle racks, which are double height with hydraulic lifts so you can put them up. Yesterday morning at 8:15, I was in Minden Street car park looking at potential for cycle parking there, increasing cycle parking, improving the motorcycle parking in that area as well. So there are a lot of things which I think your point is quite valid, David. Can we join that up? And I'm really keen for us to promote cycling. And we are working hard. We've got a good team, and early this year I got all of the officers involved in cycling projects together, and we looked at what can we achieve in 3, 6 and 9 months, and we'll be sitting down again in November, just reviewing what progress has been made. Do we need to change the priorities? But we have to work with roads committees as well, so it's not always our road that we impact upon.
Just going back to St Helier for the moment, and without wishing to prompt any dispute between yourself and your assistant minister, how much does St Helier contribute to matters which could be said to be within the public realm within their own district?
Well, I think Halkett Street's a good example where we've worked together, and I think if you stand in Beresford Street and look up Halkett Street, I think it's a fantastic example of what can be achieved with us working together. We we want more people to live in town. We want more people to come here and make transactions, either retail, hospitality, both. So it's got to be an attractive place for people to come to. And virtually all islanders use St Helier at some stage. So we've got to work closely with the parish, and that's what we're trying to do.
In terms of finance, does that ambition create any, not conflict or tension between yourself and the constables?
No, I don't think so. The parish invests significantly as well. The parish are going to be investing shortly in new play facilities in the parade. We're investing in play facilities at our site at Springfield and at Millennium Park. And what we're trying to do is to coordinate things so that we don't end up with the same equipment in all of the areas, but we end up with something that people can move around to. We're also looking about accessibility. Instead of each of those 3 playgrounds, having one accessible facility, if we put all those things together, if you've got a child that's got access challenges, they can go to one place and enjoy a playground just like any other child. So there's been, we had a very positive conversation only in the last 10 days about how we can be more joined up and avoid duplication, but work together.
I think of that.
Sorry,
Moving on
can
more
I-
generally.
sorry, Colin, sorry. Alex, Deputy Curtis first, and then sorry.
On that kind of shared responsibility, Minister, you published Delivering Investment in the Public Realm, which details a vision for Broad Street and details pedestrianisation there. But it suggests that road and public realm improvements will extend to around Library Place, which of course is a parish of St Helier Road, as is Church Street. Do you foresee any surfacing changes or public realm improvements on parish of St Helier land being funded by the parish, or do you foresee the public budget spent on parish land like that?
So I think that's the discussion that has to take place, and I think there's been a bit of misinterpretation. Broad Street is where we're looking to pedestrianise, and Library Place, the ambition is to have pedestrian priority, but we're trying to get more blue badges in and around that area. But because the fact that it's a parish road, we're not able to do that until we've spoken to the roads committee. So that's part of the delay. And in terms of the funding of that, there's been no discussion to date, as far as I'm aware, of funding for that element. So by doing Newcut, if you put yourself coming down New Street and go through Newcut, the plan is to turn right on States land initially. Yeah, but I think what that document does show is the potential to make it a really a nice area where people want to go and visit. And I think there are times when we've got to show that kind of a vision, and I pay tribute to the team who've done that work. And I like the vision I don't know if you've seen the image as you come up Conway Street. You can see it becoming a very smart area.
Thank you, Minister. And just on your point, I think more about were you talking about the different play areas that have been investing in? And of course, just a wider question is that the use of planning obligation agreements to fund these type of specific areas, I know that has been used in the past to fund. Is there some specific planning obligation agreements outstanding that would fund these particular one-off areas that help to the public
So I
realm?
don't know about play areas specifically, but I do know that the Western Bus Gateway is due to receive some funding from planning obligation agreements. And we're currently looking at how can we change the process so that money goes into infrastructure for that purpose, rather than going into the regulation side of our organisation before being released to do that. So just try and speed up that process. So, but I couldn't answer around playgrounds. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, unless there's any specific development that highlighted a playground requirement. The way that POAs currently work is that it's directly related to the development, and very often then it's quite specific as to what the POA is going to fund. So a wider approach, certainly within St Helier, on a sort of collection of POAs would be something which would be far more flexible going back to the point we were saying around flexible and dynamic approach to meeting requirements and need, if we had more of a collective way of collecting POAs, a tariff or something like that, that would work in a more beneficial way for infrastructure.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Yes, turn to a more specific item, if I may. Can you explain the crossover, please, between the allocations within the rolling vote for sea defences and the funding which is being made available for the development of the shoreline management plan?
Well, I think again that's a technical question which I'm going to look to my right for.
So there's money that's been set aside for the bigger project, which is the Half and Half project, that will be moving forward in 2028. For sea defence projects at the moment, that money is funded from the infrastructure rolling vote. So there's a number of sea defence projects that are funded from that vote. I think the total is 1.3 for 2025, which related to sea defences.
I got 1.5 for the shoreline management plan, if that's what you're talking about.
I was just looking at the government plan. So in the government plan it says for 2028, the shoreline management plan is 6.1 that's been set aside.
Okay.
And then the other sea defences in the IR infrastructure rolling vote.
And that basically covers all the other the sea defences around the island that needs to be repaired or to be improved. Or
No, so this will be repairs and slight improvements. If it's a major project and the Hob de Par is identified as the priority because of the circumstances and the height and all of that kind of stuff, there's work to be done in other areas along the south coast. So there are 3 or 4 areas that need work. Yeah.
And sort of a related question really, as to whether the rolling vote is intended to cover contingency for crisis or unforeseen funding. Maybe, for instance, if there's further storm damage or flooding, is that anticipated within the rolling vote, or is that?
No, I think it depends on the event. So if you take last week when we had flooding, then that would come out of our general expenditure. If you take a Storm Kieran, then that came out of central funds, I believe, mostly. A little bit of both, there we are. So we try to get help from...
The rolling vote said generally our business as usual current programme.
So exceptional items.
If we have any exceptional items,
you raid
they're not big enough to cover those, and we have a conversation with Treasury as to what is available or not available, or we have to deprioritise something else in order to fund it.
I think the other thing that's worth noting about the rolling vote is the team publish 4 or 5 years in advance the road resurfacing and the microfibre works that are due to take place. And I didn't know that, although I chaired a roads committee for over 2 years, I wasn't aware of that. And there's a lot of information there as to when the work's going to take place, where the work is. So they do plan quite a way in advance.
So a general point, given the frequency of unforeseen circumstances which should perhaps be foreseen, is an argument for actually making the rolling vote, upping it to cover it more?
Well, there's a combination of things, isn't there? Because it may be that we could claim from insurance for some things. So I think we've got it about right at the moment. I think, we could spend significantly more within infrastructure if we had the money. But we've got to be sensible. We've got to work with the other departments to, deliver for the island. So, I think it's...
Okay, thank you. That's fine. Area.
Thank you. And over to Deputy Curtis.
Thank you. We're just very briefly going to touch on the impact of recruitment on changes that we've heard. And our last hearing in September followed the recent announcement that there would be a recruitment freeze for civil service grades 11 and above and for the use of external consultants. You answered at the time that the focus was on how external consultants were used. Which specific areas of focus within the infrastructure remit still require external expertise, consultants and contractors?
Well, there's a huge amount of expertise that we require because we're an island and we have to have things, like the abattoir. I don't know if you've visited the abattoir. I went there a few weeks ago on a Tuesday morning. That's a specialised area and we need to get assistance there from time to time. some of our technology, whether that's to do with drains or the energy from waste plant, we will have to bring in expertise. We are also trying to develop, and I don't know if you've walked through the offices at Balazan, but I'm encouraged by the ages of people there. So we've got quite a lot of youngsters involved, engineers and the like. And so we've got to encourage them to take up a career with us in the first place, and then encourage them that we're the place they need to stay. So I think the variety of work you get within infrastructure is probably unparalleled on the island from an engineering perspective. You could be working on energy from waste plant, you could be working on shoreline. There's a whole range of things you can do. So I think that we'll always have a requirement. Road safety audits, for example. We have to bring people to the island to do road safety audits because we don't do enough of them to keep our accreditation. Now, I'm due to visit Guernsey to talk to their infrastructure team and see if there's anything we can do together, because I mentioned the abattoir, and I don't know why we don't share staff for the abattoir, because they'll be doing similar amount of volumes to us, and it's so where can we work more closely together with organisations is something that I'm quite keen to explore.
That's some things that have continued. Looking at where things might have stopped, in which areas have you ceased the use of external consultants, and how have any skill gaps been filled?
Well, certainly we aren't using as many in the transport area. That has slowed down some of the work. So, for example, introduction of green lanes in some parishes has been delayed by our decision not to use external consultants. And if we can recruit locally, we'd be delighted to recruit locally to some of these positions. We've got around 535 employees, I think, at the moment within our part of the organisation. So it's a substantial workforce. And as I mentioned earlier in the hearing, some of those people you never see. They're working at night. They're working at weekends to keep keeping the island running, I think, is the hashtag we use. And the frontline guys and girls, supported by the team at head office, do a terrific job, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to carry on about that idea of external consultants and training our own and making sure people one of the issues, I know, I was at a talk at Highlands the other day, and this is about getting youngsters trained, put into programs which are valid for Jersey. Is there a program there with regard to infrastructure and across the board?
Because I was contacted a few months ago about a course that Highlands thought they may have to cancel, and got in touch with the team, and I think we found solutions for those people in terms of engineering. So,
is there a strategy out there to do this?
I can answer that. So we've had a very big focus on recruitment over the last 2 years. Again, refreshing our people, because as you've rightly highlighted, we've got a lot of pressures. We've got an ageing workforce we need to refresh, and we need to get people, especially younger people, encouraged and interested in our professions. So just a very quick highlight. So we've got now 6 bursary students that we're funding through university places. That covers both engineering and some natural science work. So that's a first for government that we've commenced. We've got a number of apprenticeships, traineeships in different areas. We've also got some, for qualified staff, some sort of career development programs. So engineering is a good example where we're trying to grow engineers and take them through a journey. It can take 6-7 years to get to charter status and beyond. So I think we've got to look at all avenues. I think it would be good if we can give the panel a bit of an update on just our people and recruitment, and our certainly younger in careers, as we've called them. We also sponsor a design engineer construct program. We're just going to switch that to Highlands College, but again, that supports a GCSE in design engineer and construct. And so we're a supporter of that as a department through Property Holdings, as an example. So we've got a number of examples where we're trying to do that.
And we also see people, I asked this question only last week, we also see people move from our fleet department to the DVS and vice versa. So it's quite good that people have got this opportunity, and I think there's a lot of work in the infrastructure team that gets done, and I get a fairly regular update on where we are with our people, and I'm encouraged actually. I am encouraged, and you know we've got a lot of local talent, and we'd always have a need to bring people in, but I think the focus very much is on developing our people.
Okay, I've got two more questions before I hand back to the chair. Touching on the information and the quantity you get, you've also mentioned about redeployment of staff in previous hearings and diverting them just to do something else.
Yeah.
Is this process happening? It sounds like it is. And what information do you have so far on the grade level of those redeployments?
Oh, I've got no idea about the grades. That's a personal thing they have between themselves and the organisation.
This is specifically more about, obviously, the fact there was a grade 11 freeze.
Yeah.
So it's less about, obviously, the
Oh, right,
opportunity.
so-
It's more
So
with
I'm
regard
not,
to that.
I think if we've got a requirement for a specialist, then we'll make the case that we need the specialist, because we can't switch off a function because we can't recruit somebody. So, you know, there has to be exemptions. But I think we've got a good track record in terms of refocusing people. We're doing some work on productivity. I think I've spoken about that in the past. And I'm really keen that we do that. So by getting the example I gave earlier, getting all the people involved in cycling around the table means they're not working in silos and they can see where we're headed to. And it may be that we divert some resource from a project here to finish a project there to get it across the line. So I'm very keen for the team to adopt that kind of approach.
Just on exemptions, and we've heard obviously from the other ministers about exemptions. Has there been given a limit on how many exemptions per department gets? It feels that there's.
I'm not aware that we've had any exemption in infrastructure to date, but I'd have no hesitation if the team told me that we need somebody to do a specific job because we were losing somebody. I'd be very confident of going and making the case for that. You know, this is not something that. There will be times, because of the very nature of what we do, that we may need to ask for an exemption. We haven't had to do that to date, and where we can move resource around, we would do that in the first instance. But some of our things are so specialised, there may be a case, and that's the point I'm trying to make, is we're not going to switch off an area of our operation that's vital to keep the island running.
And are you confident that the Chief Executive and Chief Minister hear that criticality, and when you ask, and you sincerely ask, that will be met with keep the island running?
Very confident. I wouldn't be asking if I didn't think it was vital.
Got it.
Yeah, so I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that the infrastructure are going to be asking for exemptions left, right, and centre.
No.
If I'm going to ask for an exemption, there's a damn good reason for me asking for that, and the team have convinced me that we need it.
Okay.
Yeah? And I'll take some convincing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And really closing up, when you were last here in September, we discussed with you whether the proposed budget allowed you to fulfil the priorities which had been set out in the government's common strategic policy. Can you tell the panel how you would characterise this budget and what it will allow this government to achieve?
Well, I think it does allow us to achieve that. We've spent a lot of time talking about the enabler for affordable homes and for other people to join the network. We've spent some time talking about public realm, which is part of our aim is to help St Helier. But I think it's a sensible budget. I think it's a budget that we can deliver to. And, you know, the team have put in an awful lot of effort into getting us to this stage, working with colleagues from Treasury and other departments to get us to where we are today. And, you know, I'm very familiar with budgets of this size and delivering to them. So I have every confidence that we're going to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. And Minister, there have been representations from people, and also actually we've heard it in the States Assembly that this budget is because of the time span of the current government to the next elections, that this is a short-term budget. This is because of delivery trying for within the 2 years, but and then that there has been representations that this is a short-term approach. Do you think that this is appropriate for infrastructure, that there is this focus on 2 years
I think,
delivery?
as far as infrastructure is concerned, we always will have short, medium, and long-term budgeting for infrastructure goes way beyond 2028. It goes way beyond my lifetime. We have to continue to invest in our infrastructure, but we have to work with the envelope we're given, and that's why I'm committed to coming back to the Assembly, or coming to the Assembly with a proposal around a liquid waste charge, which would enable that area to be funded for the long term. And so, it certainly won't be popular, but I think we're elected to make decisions based on the information we have, and if we know that we need more funding for an area, then we have to go away and identify that and try and find solutions for that.
Thank you, Minister. And I think the final question, we've just had the CNAG publish a report and findings related to the long-term kind of future proofing the budget and looking at, for example, the island outcome indicators and having that always in the back of our mind as state members and the Council of Ministers specifically. How much analysis has been done with those island outcome indicators and that look to the future in preparing this budget? And do you feel that that is appropriate, as you were saying about infrastructure needing to have that long term? Do you feel that was looked
I
at?
think we do take consideration. It's not the only measure we look at, because there are other measures we need to consider. But I do think we need to be mindful of that as a measure. But we've got to make decisions on financial matters. We are responsible for the income and the expenditure, and we've got to make responsible decisions on those areas, not only in infrastructure but for the island. So some of the decisions we make aren't popular, but we have to make those decisions based on our responsibilities.
Thank you. And I'm looking at my panel members, see if there's any more questions to wrap up. So I think we can wrap up 5 minutes early. So thank you very much, Minister, for that. And I'd like to thank the Minister and also officers for coming today and providing the information.
Thank you. And we'll get you the presentation on the attenuation, because I think you'll find it very interesting.